There are very few things in this life that hurt quite as deeply as hearing your own child tell you that your presence is inconvenient to them. When my daughter, Maya, looked right into my eyes over the glowing screen of her phone 3 days before Christmas and said, "Dad, please, just don't come this year. Richard's boss and some very important colleagues from his firm are flying in, and, well, it's just not a good time for you to be here," I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt a cold, heavy silence settle into the marrow of my bones. At 58 years old, sitting alone in a quiet, drafty house where the holiday decorations remained neatly packed away in cardboard boxes because I didn't see the point of setting them up for one person, that sentence felt heavier than any grief I had carried since my wife passed away. My name is Arthur, and for 34 years, I worked the floor of the municipal water and sanitation department. It wasn't glamorous work, and my hands still carry the permanent, rough calluses of a man who spent decades turning iron valves, clearing drainage lines, and standing in freezing winter rain at 3 in the morning to fix a burst city mains so other families could have clean water on Christmas morning. Every single drop of sweat, every missed holiday dinner with my own extended family when I was younger, and every aching joint in my back was for one purpose: to give Maya the kind of life where she never had to worry about whether the lights would stay on or if there would be food on the table. I paid her tuition at the state university. I helped scrape together the down payment for the modest suburban home she and her husband, Richard, bought 3 years ago. Richard is a junior partner at a corporate logistics firm, a man who always had a crisp smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and a habit of checking his expensive watch whenever he spoke to someone he deemed beneath his social tier. I never complained. Whenever I visited their home, I always made sure to wipe my boots twice at the front door, kept my voice low so as not to disturb Richard's home office calls, and brought jars of my homemade blackberry preserves that Maya used to love when she was a little girl. This year, however, things had changed. Ever since Richard received a promotion back in November, the phone calls had grown shorter. The invitations for Sunday dinner stopped coming. When I tried to call Maya to ask what she'd like me to bring for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner, the prime rib she always bragged about to her friends, she let the phone ring out twice before texting me back with a curt message, "Can't talk, in a meeting." Then came that video call on the evening of December 22nd. I can still picture the background of her pristine, minimalist living room, the designer Christmas tree glowing with cold, white LED lights, completely devoid of the handmade paper ornaments Maya used to make with her mother when she was little. "Dad, are you listening to me?" she had asked, her voice tight with that nervous impatience she picked up from her husband. "It's just for optics. Richard is trying to secure a senior vice presidency. His boss, Mr. Sterling, is very traditional, but he's also, well, he likes things to look a certain way. You know how you get when you start talking about your old work stories, or wearing that old wool sweater with the frayed elbows. It just doesn't fit the picture we're trying to present right now." I remember looking past her shoulder, watching Richard walk by in the background, holding a glass of amber whiskey, not even glancing my way to say hello to the man who built the very foundation of the life he was currently enjoying. "I understand, Maya," I had said quietly, my throat feeling like it was lined with sand. "If my presence is an embarrassment to your new life, I won't ruin your holiday." "Oh, don't be dramatic, Dad," she sighed, waving a manicured hand dismissively. "We'll FaceTime you on Christmas Day. For like, 10 minutes. Have a quiet holiday by yourself, watch some television, and save yourself the long drive in that old truck." The screen went black. The call disconnected. I sat alone in the living room for a very long time, the only sound being the rhythmic ticking of the antique mantel clock that belonged to my grandfather. The house was freezing because I hadn't bothered to turn the thermostat up past 62 degrees to save on heating oil. I looked down at my hands, calloused, scarred, and stained with the honest labor of a lifetime. For the first time in 58 years, I didn't feel anger. I felt an absolute, profound emptiness. My daughter, the center of my entire universe, had traded her own flesh and blood for the temporary approval of a man who wouldn't piss on her if she was on fire. The next morning, the local weather forecast warned of a severe winter storm front sweeping down from the northern highways, bringing heavy black ice and freezing fog across the Tri-County area. Most people were staying indoors, stocking up on canned soup and firewood. But I didn't stock up on anything. I walked out to my driveway, climbed into the cab of my battered 2012 Ford F-150, the truck that had carried me through 2 decades of utility emergencies, and turned the key. The engine coughed twice before roaring to life, its familiar, heavy rumble vibrating right through the steering wheel. I had no intention of crashing their elite Christmas party. I wasn't going to show up at their front door with my duffel bag and demand entry like some pathetic, unwanted beggar. I loved my daughter too much to humiliate her like that, no matter how cruelly she had treated me. Instead, I drove down to the valley town 30 miles away, where the municipal district yards were located. The city manager had called an emergency standby alert because of the freezing rain warning, and they needed experienced hands to monitor the main pressure valves along the commercial sector, including the upscale commercial plaza right outside the luxury hotel where Richard's firm was hosting their high society Christmas Eve charity gala. I figured I would spend my Christmas Eve doing what I had always done, working in the cold, earning an honest day's pay, and keeping the city safe while everyone else sat inside their warm, glittering rooms drinking champagne. I had no idea that by midnight, the name Arthur Vance, and the bitter betrayal that drove me out into the freezing night, would be broadcast across every television screen in the state, changing our lives forever. Working the night shift on Christmas Eve in a utility truck is a strange kind of loneliness, but at 58, I had grown quite accustomed to the quiet companionship of the road. By 9 o'clock, the freezing rain had turned into a thick, blinding sleet that coated the power lines and asphalt in a treacherous sheet of clear ice. Most of the downtown streets were completely deserted, save for the occasional snowplow flashing its amber beacons against the dark, empty storefronts. My assigned station was Sector 4, right at the base of the Grand Commercial Plaza where the St. Jude Corporate Charity Gala was being held. It was the crowning social event of the season for our region's corporate elite. Even from 2 blocks away, you could see the blinding glow of fairy lights wrapped around the imported pine trees lining the entrance, and the endless stream of luxury sedans pulling up under the grand portico to drop off men in tailored tuxedos and women wrapped in designer furs. I parked my Ford F-150 by the utility access hatch near the side alley, stepping out into the biting wind to check the pressure gauges on the main municipal water lines that fed the hotel and the surrounding high-rises. My joints ached fiercely with every step I took on the frozen pavement, the damp cold biting right through my heavy canvas work jacket. I didn't mind the physical discomfort, though. Physical pain was a clean, honest thing. It was far easier to bear than the quiet, hollow ache in my chest every time I thought about Maya sitting inside that warm, glittering ballroom, laughing at jokes told by people who didn't even know her real middle name. About 10 o'clock, my radio crackled to life with static. Sector 4, Arthur, do you copy? The dispatcher's voice broke through the hum of the heater. Go ahead, base, I copy, I spoke into the mic, wiping a layer of sleet off my face with my heavy work glove. We've got an urgent sensor alert coming from the sub-basement manifold directly beneath the grand ballroom of the Grand Horizon Hotel. Pressure readings are fluctuating wildly, and if that main line ruptures under the sudden temperature drop, it's going to flood the lower levels and knock out power to the entire block, including the charity gala. Can you check it out? I let out a slow, tired breath that turned into a cloud of white vapor in the freezing air. Copy that, base. Heading down to the service entrance now. I grabbed my heavy tool belt and flashlight, trudging through the slush toward the side service tunnel of the hotel. The service entrance was a stark contrast to the grand marble lobby where guests were arriving. It was a concrete labyrinth of humming HVAC units, industrial laundry chutes, and thick bundles of electrical conduits. As I made my way down the concrete stairs toward the main water shut-off valve, the muffled sounds of a live jazz band and polite applause filtered down through the ceiling vents. It felt surreal, walking through the dark, damp underbelly of a luxury building while upstairs, people were clinking crystal glasses and celebrating a holiday built on peace and goodwill, while my own daughter had explicitly barred her father from sharing even a crust of bread with her because he didn't look expensive enough. I reached the sub-basement manifold and immediately saw the problem. A secondary pressure release valve had iced over and jammed, causing the pressure gauge to creep dangerously close to the red line. If I didn't relieve the pressure manually by turning the heavy brass wheel valve overhead, the entire joint would blow within the hour. I set my flashlight down on a metal drum, reached up, and gripped the freezing iron wheel with both hands. It was rusted tight from years of condensation and neglect by the hotel's internal maintenance crew. I planted my boots firmly against the concrete floor, gritted my teeth, and threw my entire body weight into it. My muscles screamed in protest, my old back injury flaring up with a sharp, blinding stab of pain, but I didn't stop. I leaned harder, feeling the rusted metal slowly give way with a sharp, metallic shriek. Clank! The valve spun loose, and a pressurized hiss of cold water vented safely down the drainage pipe. The gauges dropped back into the green zone. I leaned against the damp concrete wall, panting heavily, wiping the sweat and grime from my forehead with my sleeve. That was when I heard the sound of approaching footsteps and low voices echoing down the concrete service corridor just past the storage racks. Normally, guests or hotel executives never came down into this sector of the sub-basement. But tonight, the heavy oak service door swung open, and the unmistakable silhouette of a man in an expensive tuxedo stepped into the dim fluorescent light, followed closely by a woman whose familiar, nervous laugh made my blood run entirely cold. It was Richard. And he wasn't alone. I froze in the shadow of a massive electrical transformer box, half hidden behind a stack of spare banquet chairs. My heart gave a heavy, sickening thud against my ribs. It was Richard, all right, his tuxedo jacket slightly rumpled, his silk tie loosened at the collar. But the woman clinging to his arm was definitely not my daughter, Maya. She was a tall, striking woman with dark, styled hair and a heavy dusting of glittering evening makeup, wearing an emerald green gown that cost more than my first 2 cars combined. I recognized her instantly from the local society pages left on Maya's coffee table a month ago. Victoria Sterling, the daughter of Richard's powerful corporate boss, the very man whose approval my son-in-law had sacrificed our family Christmas to secure. "Richard, darling, are you completely sure nobody can see us down here?" Victoria's voice floated through the damp air, light, breathless, and dripping with a spoiled, careless amusement. "If my father catches us sneaking away from the gala before the midnight toast, he'll have your head on a spike. You know how traditional he is about corporate optics." Richard chuckled, a low, smooth sound that made my fists clench so tightly inside my heavy work gloves that my fingernails dug into my palms. "Relax, Vicky," Richard murmured, pulling her close by the waist and pressing a heavy, lingering kiss against her neck. "My wonderful, obedient little wife is currently sitting 30 miles away in a quiet suburban house eating frozen TV dinners, completely believing I'm working late on quarterly projections with the board. She's too trusting to ever question a thing. As long as we play our cards right tonight, your father is going to sign off on the senior VP transfer papers by Monday morning. Once that title is locked in, getting rid of Maya and her pathetic, blue-collar background will be the easiest thing I've ever done." Victoria laughed softly, resting her manicured hand against Richard's lapel. "You really are ruthless, Richard. But I love it. Imagine her trying to fit into our social circle, bringing her old man with his dirt-stained fingernails and cheap truck to our estate parties. It would have been a complete disaster." "Exactly," Richard agreed, leaning in for another kiss. "Out with the old baggage, in with the new empire." Every drop of blood in my body rushed to my ears, roaring like a flooded river. For a single, terrifying second, I thought about stepping out from the shadows. I thought about grabbing Richard by his expensive silk lapels and throwing him against the concrete wall until his pristine corporate smile shattered. I thought about the thousands of hours I spent breaking my back on the water mains so Maya could go to private school, so she could buy nice clothes, so she could marry a man she thought hung the stars in the sky, only to be treated like an embarrassing, disposable stepping stone by a deceitful, ambitious parasite. But I didn't move. I stayed completely still in the dark, my breath catching in my throat, letting every vile word sink deep into my memory. Then, right above us in the ceiling cavity, a muffled electronic tone chimed, followed by the faint hum of a television crew's live mobile broadcast unit parked in the alleyway just outside the service doors. The local news channel, WXYZ Metro, was doing a live midnight broadcast right outside the Grand Horizon Hotel to cover the charity gala, interviewing elite guests as they stepped out for the midnight champagne toast. An idea, cold, calculated, and absolute, formed in my mind. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I quietly reached down, picked up my heavy steel flashlight, and walked back up the service stairs into the freezing sleet, my boots crunching steadily against the ice. By midnight, the mobile news van was set up right under the hotel's grand portico, its bright halogen floodlights cutting through the falling snow. The live reporter, a young woman holding a microphone with a red station logo, was beaming into the camera as the glass doors of the hotel opened and the glittering crowd poured out into the night air for the countdown. I was standing right beside the camera platform, still wearing my heavy, salt-stained canvas utility jacket, my face smudged with black pipe grease, and my Ford F-150 idling loudly right behind the news van with its amber emergency flashers spinning. As Richard and Victoria stepped out of the glass doors, laughing side by side, the reporter turned her microphone toward the crowd and spotted me standing alone in the glare of the lights. Thinking I was just a local utility worker braving the storm to keep the city running on Christmas, the reporter smiled brightly, shoved the mic right toward my face, and said live on national television. "And live here tonight outside the Grand Horizon Hotel, we have municipal worker Arthur Vance, out here in the freezing sleet keeping our city's infrastructure safe while everyone else celebrates. Arthur, tell us, How does it feel to be out here working hard on Christmas Eve while the rest of the world is home with their families? The camera red light blinked steadily. Across the state, in a quiet suburban living room illuminated only by the cold glow of a television screen, Maya Vance sat alone, watching her father live on the news, and right behind him, stepping out of the hotel doors arm in arm with another woman, was her husband. The microphone hovered right in front of me, its foam cover damp from the freezing sleet. The red tally light on the studio camera glowed steadily, beaming my grease-stained face and heavy canvas work jacket into living rooms across the entire state. For a second, the bustling noise of the New Year's Eve crowd outside the hotel seemed to fade into a complete, absolute silence. I looked straight into the camera lens, knowing exactly who was sitting at home on the other side of that screen. Maya was looking at the television right then, watching the father she had told not to come because he was an embarrassment to her new, high-society life. I took a slow, deliberate breath, my voice steady, calm, and carrying that quiet weight of a man who had nothing left to hide. Well, I spoke into the live microphone, my voice echoing across the courtyard and through thousands of television sets. It's true, I'm out here working tonight. My daughter told me not to come to her house for Christmas. She said my presence would ruin the image she's trying to build with her husband's wealthy associates. She told me I didn't fit the picture. A sharp murmur rippled through the small group of guests standing near the hotel entrance. I didn't blink. I slowly turned my head toward the glass doors behind me, right as Richard and Victoria stepped out into the bright floodlights, champagne glasses in hand. The moment Richard's eyes locked onto the camera, and then onto me standing right beside the reporter in full work gear, the color drained entirely from his face. His jaw went slack, and the glass in his hand nearly slipped from his fingers. I suppose she was right about one thing, I continued, looking directly back into the camera lens. Some people spend their whole lives trying to look like something they aren't. But me? I'd rather stand out here in the freezing rain, doing honest work with my own two hands, than ever sit at a table built on lies and deception. Merry Christmas to my daughter, Maya. I hope you're watching. The live broadcast cut to a stunned commercial break a second later, but the damage was already done. Within minutes, the video clip of the broadcast was being shared across social media, landing straight on the corporate network's internal feeds where Richard's boss, Mr. Sterling, happened to be scrolling. By morning, Richard's promotion was permanently cancelled, his reputation in the corporate firm was in ruins, and Victoria had already blocked his number. Maya called me at 6 o'clock on Christmas morning. Her voice was broken, choked with bitter tears and absolute humiliation as she apologized through heavy sobs for every cruel word she had ever said. I didn't yell at her. I didn't gloat. I simply listened, told her that a father's door is never truly closed to his child, and invited her to drive over to my quiet, drafty house for a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and black coffee. She came alone, without Richard, walking through my front door with her head bowed and her old woolen coat wrapped tightly around her. We didn't talk about the news broadcast, or the corporate betrayal, or the fancy party. We just sat together at the old wooden kitchen table, drinking hot coffee while the snow fell softly outside, learning how to rebuild a genuine family from the ashes of a fake one. Life has a strange way of stripping away the things that don't matter so you can finally see the truth standing right in front of you. Maya learned the hard way that people who love you for what you look like will drop you the moment you become inconvenient, but a parent's love is the only anchor that holds firm when the storm finally hits. Would you have done what I did when you found out the truth? Tell me in the comments below. And if stories like this remind you of the real value of family and honesty, hit that subscribe button and stay a while at Dad Revenge Lab.